This week, I've got two smaller films to talk about. I've got Wildlife, which is the directorial debut of Paul Dano, who mostly is known as an actor, and he and his partner Zoe Kazan wrote this film. And as far as directorial debuts go, I actually thought it was a pretty well put together. Clearly, he has had experience in the industry. It shows. It's a very actor's movie. It features Carey Mulligan, Jake Gyllenhaal, Bill Camp, and Ed Oxenbould. And Carey Mulligan and Jake Gyllenhaal play a couple, and they're in kind of early 1960s Montana. And I think there's a lot of sort of gender stuff in it. Ed Oxenbould plays their son, who it does not look like they are old enough to have a son as old as Ed Oxenbould is. And I thought he gave a great performance in this. Everyone's a very kind of all-American, very what I would imagine the Midwest is like. I wouldn't know because I'm from California and also, many decades later, but it's the story of Carey Mulligan and Jake Gyllenhaal's relationship, his kind of, I think the gender dynamics of, his expectation to be a provider and her not being satisfied with that as the status quo because I don't know if it's commitment issues, but just seems to have like responsibility issues, and they've got their problems. And this is also a first world problem movie, I think, at the end of the day. It's featuring kind of a white family in a mostly white neighborhood. They're dealing with insular issues. And I don't know if that made it hard to relate to, but it definitely made it kind of bubble-y in a sense. And having seen this back to back with a bunch of other movies that are maybe tackling more relevant stuff, it changed the perspective with which I watched it probably a little bit. But it's worth seeing, I think, for the performances. I don't think it's going to be, a super impactful movie. You can tell it's one of those ones where like maybe they want like an Independent Spirit Award, or maybe, they'd love an Oscar nomination, but I don't know if it quite has that yet. I would be interested to see, more from Paul Dano on the directing front because he clearly has a rapport with the actors. There's also a lot of just like long close-up-y held shots that I'm like, I get it. It's almost indulgent because I'm sure as an actor, you also want like the opportunity to just use your face to act with, because isn't that the dream, right? Isn't that like the ultimate role? There's a little bit of pontificating script-wise and performance-wise, a lot of monologues, a lot of long delivered, like who says this to their kids? Who says this to anybody? Like who articulates these thoughts out loud? Which, I appreciate that Carey Mulligan's character is definitely a character, and she's not perfect, and there's not she doesn't fulfill this perfect housewife role, which I think a lot of movies centering around this era probably would be prone to have her fall into. But no, I think that the complicated depth of her character is going to be challenging for a lot of people to watch. But I think that is actually what makes it a more interesting movie than expected. So I'm actually going to give it 3.9 out of 5. And then the other film I have this week is called Bodied. And I am very torn on how I feel about this movie. So on the one hand, I respect it, I guess. It's not my personal cup of tea, which doesn't mean that it's a bad movie, but it also, there's a factor when you're watching a movie. It's like you want to be able to watch it. You want to enjoy it. You want to take something away from it. And I don't know if Bodied was really for me. So it's the story of a character named Adam Merkin, who is played by Callum Worthy, who I guess is like a Disney Channel star or was a Disney Channel star. And he's just like a kind of white bread, liberal, hippie-ish white kid. It takes place in the Bay Area, which I always get like a little sensitive about, because I'm like, look, we're not all, we're pretty hippie-ish here and we're pretty liberal, and it's always tough to see yourself lampooned on screen. And this film definitely, takes a swing at over-liberalization or over social justice warrioring, I guess. And it's sometimes a little hard to see a mirror held up to yourself in a less than flattering light. And like, I know people have used that term, for I've been called a social justice warrior as an insult. And I'm like, when did that become an insult? But okay, all right, I guess. And this film is one of the films that like would probably use that as an insult. So basically, it's produced by Eminem, the rapper, not the candy. And it follows the world of Callum Worthy is this white kid who is, I guess, obsessed with like rap battles, and he's doing a dissertation on it, and so he gets involved. And I should note that this is like a YouTube co-production or production, so it's very flashy, it's very now, it's very in your face, which also for me at least made it a little like tiring to watch. It felt a little much. But basically, Callum Worthy's character Adam enters the world of rap battling and underground rap battling. And look, I respect the commentary that it's making. I felt probably a little uncomfortable with it. My problem with this movie is the way it treats its women. And ironically, I'm going to sound like one of the women in the film as a byproduct of this criticism, but it doesn't mean I shouldn't make this criticism. So there are only a couple female characters, one of which is the main character's very annoying, super vegan, overly social justice warrior girlfriend, and her only purpose seems to be serving as an annoying personification of, I don't know if it's everything wrong with liberal culture, because what she's doing isn't necessarily wrong. In fact, a lot of the things she's pointing out are very valid, but the way she's delivering it and the tone and also just the performance of the actress is impossible to watch. And so she's just this horrible, almost one-dimensional character. And then you've got one of the female participants in the rap battles who is, very over the top and, again, has some, valid points about how she's treated in that world. And then you have the wife of one of Adam's friends who does have a really great speech, but she, appears very briefly and has this one monologue and then goes away. But the rest of the women in the film are, hoes and skanks, for the lack of a better, it's just, or the way they talk about the women is just so degrading. My frustration is a lot of the criticisms you're pointing out, you are also participating in the negativity of the culture surrounding that, right? You are part of the problem by creating this film and by portraying people this way. You're pointing out stereotypes, you're pointing out hypocrisy, but you're also being a hypocrite at the same time. So doesn't that undermine the entire message of your film? So again, my big thing is, yes, I respect some of the things it's pointing out. I'm sure I am guilty of doing some of the things that it's pointing out. It's not necessarily a conservative movie for sure, and it's not pulling punches with liberals, which is fair, right? That's all fine to see, and I think it's actually good to see a balance in cinema because, people accuse the Hollywood liberal elite of making all these movies, but at the same time, I still have to want to watch your movie, and I still have to want to relate to the characters, and I still have to want to see a story and an arc, and I don't feel like I got any of this. I feel like this was just a vehicle for a bunch of YouTube stars or personalities who I don't know who they are. The only other person I recognized maybe was Charlemagne the God, and that's only because he was on MTV's Catfish, which should tell you how where this audience is appealing to. So I think I'm probably going to be in the minority in terms of reviewers in that I didn't really enjoy the experience, and I will respect it for pointing out some valid issues, but it's also perpetuating some of these issues. So I'm only going to give it 2.5 out of 5.